It's like carrying a 3D shape above my head, and I'm walking around with it until I've handed it over to the editor. It's there all the time. It's all those characters.
This is Writer's Mosaic in Conversation. John Siddique talks to the writer Saima Mir about her crime series and about breaking out from the mould of writing expected of her.
I'm in a beautiful part of Bradford in West Yorkshire, overlooking rolling green hills and I think a golf course. And I'm sitting in a very lovely kitchen with 2 cups of tea and the author Saima Mir. Saima, welcome to your own kitchen.
Thank you.
Or your sister's kitchen.
It is my sister's
as it
kitchen.
Is. And and you kind of just come off stage at Bradford Lit Fest yesterday. Which is what you're here for. We had a beautiful time, and it's really kind of you to talk to us about your creative life.
Thank you for having me.
I find myself very interested in your journey because I've known you for quite a long time. I'm trying to think how long it is now.
It's over 20 years.
Is it over 20 years?
Yes, I was at the local paper and I interviewed you, and you were the poet in residence, I think at the prison.
Oh, at Wetherby?
Yes.
Is it then?
Yeah,
oh, gosh.
a long time ago.
I was surrounded by young criminals in those days. Dear God. So I found myself thinking this morning about young Saima,
right,
and what she must have been like. Because I always think that authors have got these kind of interesting inner children, and so I'd love to meet Saima's inner child, the kind of the young storyteller reader. What was she like, and what was she reading, and when did she start writing?
I was afraid of everything. I was somebody who is the exact opposite of who I am now. I love to read, and I read everything. So when I was very little, I'd read things like Anne of Green Gables and Chalet School and this kind of thing, and Roald Dahl, all those kind of things that you read when you're a small child in England. But as I got older, I wanted to see myself in books, and I couldn't find myself anywhere. And I'd used to visit my grandmother in Karachi in her house, and it was this home that was the centre of visitors, and people used to leave their old books there. And so I found this writer called Bapsi Sidwa, who was a Parsi writer, and she wrote this brilliant book called Cracking India, and it's also called Earth 1947, and The Crow Eaters, and I read a lot of her, and that was the first time I think I saw women of South Asian heritage in books, and I loved that. Then I used to read a lot of Malcolm X, who I found in Shared Earth, I mentioned this to you before, in that small shop in Bradford. Every speech that Malcolm X ever wrote. I couldn't find books that had people like me in them, and I didn't want to read highbrow literature at the time. I wasn't interested in the Salman Rushdies and those kind of books. I did when I was about 19, 20, I found Arundhati Roy, who I absolutely fell in love with, and I decided when I grew up I want to be you. And I've never stopped loving that book, The God of Small Things. She's who I wanted to be when I grew up, and I'm really glad that she has retained that in my brain.
Yeah.
And also then I read A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth, which I just loved at the time.
Tell me about Malcolm X. Tell me about what Malcolm X means to you.
So Malcolm X was the first time I'd read a book by somebody who was Muslim and happened to be of colour and wasn't Pakistani, which I thought was really fascinating. And the idea that this man had gone on this transformative journey was everything to me. And that by the end of his life, he'd said, I made a mistake about some of the things. That was a pivotal moment in my childhood, to see that you can do something wrong and then you can say, actually, I was wrong about that, and then I'm going to go on this journey. So whenever he made a mistake or read something that showed him that something he believed in was in error, he rectified that. And that really felt like power to me, and a good man and a right person to be.
See, I'm in full agreement. I grew up in not exactly the same way, but when I came across Malcolm X, it was that that rectification, the acknowledgement of mistake, or the kind of wrong direction, and then and the adjustment, and I've just written an essay about that, so that's really interesting, and to me that's his greatest power.
Yes,
I think.
And the thing I could never understand was why Martin Luther King was celebrated and Malcolm X was vilified. I couldn't understand that as a child, and I understood what people were saying about by any means necessary and these kind of things, but for me it was all taken so out of context without understanding the oppression of these people, that as a teenager, and I think I must have been 16 at the time, it just didn't make sense to me and it didn't add up. And the other thing I absolutely loved about him was his use of language and rhetoric and the musicality in those words. It was powerful. It's one of the most powerful influences of my life, I would say.
And how does that kind of manifest now? Like his influence into you? Because I'm interested in Malcolm's influence now, today, rather than always looking back historically.
The idea that you can say that you were wrong. We live in a society where social media means we're vilified for any mistake we make. And I think that's really unhealthy. How do we grow? How do we change? How do we discover that we were wrong? The shaming of us around that kind of thing, that stays with me. Being able to say that I was wrong. And also the balancing of two people. One thing I think is that was not discussed until very recently was this idea that for society to progress, we had to have Malcolm X and we had to have Martin Luther King, and you had to have these people wanting the same thing with opposing ideas. And that's how society moves. It's kind of nudged between the two. Someone saying only peaceful ways, and someone saying, hang on a second, we need to do what needs to be done to protect ourselves. So that holding two opposing ideas in your head is really quite important to me.
Absolutely. And the ability to do that too, isn't it?
The ability to do that and to realise that actually I don't always have the answer, I just know some information.
Yeah.
Also when I wrote Akbar Khan actually, so the Khan is very much about people doing what they need to do to survive. It's very much about that. And it's very much about, yes, people making mistakes, but also about why they're doing certain things to save their family or their culture or their people, their community. And when I wrote Akbar Khan's character in the second book, I read a lot of Malcolm X rhetoric and what he was like, and that being misunderstood and being maligned for years and years. And then only years later, people saying, oh, actually, maybe what he was saying was right, or maybe it was steeped in truth, or maybe there was this reason for it.
Yeah, I recognise, now that you say that, I do recognise that in Akbar Khan, because you've got all this sort of criminal activity going on, but there's a principledness, isn't there?
Yeah.
Within it all, and a kind of, I don't know, kind of an earthness, a groundedness, and a kind of like steadfastness to kind of what is right.
He believes that he's in this world which is mistreating everybody, and he believes that he's going to take on what needs to be done so that other people don't.
So you've got all this kind of influence going into you in an early age. So how does your kind of artistic side start to manifest?
So my mother's father was a journalist in Iran, and it was this real romantic profession. He died when my mother was 11, and so writing was this really idealistic kind of world-changing thing that you did. And so I was steeped in that. My mum, she never published anything. She never really did anything with her talent, but she was always writing. There was always something going on. I was taken to the library a lot as a child. And so storytelling was what I had, and I loved it. So I used to try to write. But I went to a girls' Catholic school, and I didn't really fit the mould of what I think success was. And I think it did a lot to damage my confidence in terms of being able to write fiction. And so I stopped writing for quite a long time. And then I became a journalist, which was after being married. So by the time I was 25, I'd been married and divorced twice. And my life was pretty much over in terms of cultural acceptance. And so there's nothing to lose. And I knew I needed to build something on my own terms. And I'd become quite, I don't know if gobby is the word, or I just didn't care anymore And so I found a way to get the local paper to give me a job. And I found writing through that. They're a very different kind of writing.
Let me sort of build on that then, because when I read the Khan trilogy, as it will be now.
It will be.
I'm at the duopoly at the minute, but soon the trilogy.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. And you've made this dense world. It is dense, and all these layers and people and so on. But the journalistic observation sort of cuts through, doesn't it? And I wondered if you'd share with us, I don't know if you can, but lean into a little bit about your process of observation. How's that been honed? How's that not affected by the conditioning that China tries to pull? You make an observation and therefore you draw a conclusion from observation. How do you avoid conclusion in observation so you actually show what's going on? Because that is in your writing.
Right. That's interesting. I think there's two things. So one is I'm a trained TV journalist as well. So I was trained to see things in pictures. So as an old school newspaper journalist, you're trained to pick up quotes. So you're really honed to listen in on what someone's saying. So I quotes, dialogue, and then images. But I don't know if I ever do withdraw judgment. Or maybe I'm thinking about this as I'm talking to you.
I wouldn't say judgment, but you don't do that kind of false impartiality nonsense of the BBC,
right.
Lie that the BBC tells. You don't do that, but you allow the person to actually speak, don't you?
That's how we learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's how I'm on a journey my entire life. I know everybody's on a journey, but I love being in rooms with people who are cleverer than me. I love that. I love learning things from them. I don't want to ever be there where I'm impressing everybody with my fantastic rhetoric and knowledge. So I know what's wrong with me. I hold my own demons and trauma in my own hands. I know. So I try and just present what I see and what I hear and then say, why don't you make a conclusion? And some of it is having gone to court as a journalist at a young age and being there and seeing people who are accused of committing crimes and seeing their mothers. And one of the things I remember happening to me was I interviewed the mothers-in-law of one of the 7/7 bombers, and I remember going to knock at a house in Beeston in Leeds, and a woman came out. It was a back-to-back house, and there was washing hanging on the line, shalwar kameez and dupatte and things like that. And this little old woman came out, and she just looked at me and she said, why don't you people just leave us alone? And she saw me and she saw the look at my face, and I saw her soften because she'd been door-knocked by so many white journalists, and I was there as one of the few. I think I was the only Asian journalist and the only journalist of colour at BBC Look North at the time. And there was something in her face that just made me think, no one has ever thought about you as just a person. You're just a mother who had a baby who grew up to do this thing. And I just want to present people and say, look, here is a person. What happens to them is due to a set of circumstances and decisions. It's not just one choice that they've made.
It's interesting that you should bring that up because you, dear listener, on the day that we were recording this interview, it is the 20th anniversary of that.
I didn't even know.
You know that.
That's amazing.
Isn't it? Mm. So that should just surface out of the blue. It's 20 years today.
Right.
And I was reflecting just yesterday because I wrote in my book Recital this kind of 4-poem sequence about the murder of Jean-Charles de Menezes, mm-hmm. which happens in 3 days' time, 20 years ago, and 3 days' time. And I found myself going to London and just walking his route that the police had chased him along to kill him. Mm. I kind of how that's kind of just disappeared, I wonder if that will be mentioned. I'm sure it will now, but I wonder where we're at with that, So that whole period is interesting. I'm interested to see how that will be mined in the next few days.
Do you know that we didn't see people, or journalists didn't see people as their whole? They just saw us as skin colour, and that was it. Now I was in newsrooms where things were said like, they shouldn't have come here and come into our city and done this thing. I heard from people I interviewed in Leeds who ran community centres that journalists had gone in and put bugs under their tables and recorded things without their permission. And actually, when I was at BBC Look North, they didn't have any connections with anyone who was from the Pakistani community. And I use that word really lightly, because what is a community, or any imams? They just didn't have any of that. So in order to get this story, they'd absolutely burnt this entire group of people down. And then I went in and there was mistrust and nobody wanted to speak. And then they would speak to me, and I speak various languages and I understand the culture, and I come at it from empathy because I am one of those people. And then slowly I tried to rebuild that. But it's very much evident that you don't actually want to know why these young men went and did that. You've already decided that these are bad people and we're good people, and that's why they did that.
That's right. I've never seen anything about the why.
No.
And why is always my first question as an author.
And the Khan comes from that. I want to know why. I want to know why somebody goes and decides I'm going to commit crime. I want to know why no child decides when they're born, I'm going to strap a bomb to me and I'm going to go and do this. They don't want to play. They want to play with sticks and footballs and things. So why did we not want to look at that? When a mother gives birth to a child and life comes out of her, that's a new life. It's a fresh beginning. Why do we decide that, that one is already stamped with evil?
Journalism seems what we laughingly call journalism now, which I wouldn't deign such a word near the stuff that comes out.
Yeah.
The removal of the why seems to be entirely its purpose.
Yeah. I always wanted to know why. Why has this happened? What is the point of reporting a news story if it doesn't benefit us in stopping the thing happening in the future? And also, I grew up in Bradford, and I grew up just streets from where the riots happened. And I remember in the aftermath of 7/7, I interviewed a professor who was at Leeds University, and he said that there was a link between the sentences that were handed down to the men who were involved in the riots and 7/7. He said you could trace it back. The idea that these men had set things alight, thrown bricks, and been handed, decades of years of prison. Their mothers had said to them, "Beta, go to the prison, go to the police, and say what you've done," thinking that they would be handled with understanding, and that didn't happen. And that entire generation from that city was removed. And this professor said to me that there's a direct link between that and the radicalisation that ended up with 7/7. And why has nobody discussed that? Why is that not talked about?
I remember that. I do. I remember that very clearly.
And there was a riot that happened in the White estate of Ravenscliffe just a couple of weeks later, with almost identical things and almost identical crimes, but the sentences handed down to those young white men were very different. And then they wonder why cities implode and why characters like Akbar Khan.
Well, you can't have why. You can't have why. So
yeah, I want to know why, which is why I write stories.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm very grateful for your why, as it were. And it's interesting that it has to go into fiction. That's the place where we find why and what if and where and who we are. Let's move away from this, though.
Let's do it.
A little bit away from this, because we're going dark side there, going shadowy.
Can I tell you a story about dark side and shadowy? When I wrote the Khan and I read it back, so there's about a couple of years between me writing the book and then it being edited and packaged and I read it, and so in 2 years I'd changed, and my neighbour had said to me, "You write very dark things," and so I've got to read this book again. So I read it, and I said to my husband, so I've read this book and there's a lot of rage on the page. And he said,
"Yeah,
Saima, I've never known you do anything that's light and breezy in your life. So that's clearly why I've taken this down that road. But we can go to joy now."
Exactly. You've preempted me. Can you see my note on joy there? So I was wondering about your relationship with joy. You said in a piece that you've written for us, and I quote you, "I want to live, feel joy, and sing songs to my children. I want to make great art away from the gaze of the world." So what are you doing about that?
I'm working on that. That is a work in progress. I think I've lost that art of doing that. The world seems to strip us of it, right? That I have put distance between me and the world, and there's people I now don't want to write for, and I don't pursue that anymore. I've done some music therapy, which I absolutely love, and I've started to learn how to play drums, which feels really somatic and wonderful, and has taken me back to my own childhood of playing the tolak at Mendy's.
Oh, wow.
And one thing I didn't realise was how much of this stuff, which is passed off as frivolity, is actually a real survival technique that was handed down to young women of Indian and Pakistani and Bangladeshi heritage. That tap of the tolak and the folk songs, which I love, so I've started doing that a lot. But I'm just writing for myself. I now take time to write things that are just for me and edit them just for me, and only pass them to people I really respect, which is nice.
See, I don't even like the. I do agree with it that joy is an essential act of resistance, but even the concept of resistance still internalizes our colonizer, and I'm really big on not living from an internal colonizer, but joy is an absolutely essential thing, as it were, but not in yes as resistance, but also as important as just breath, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't think it came to me as a point of resistance either. I think it came for, you can be, I'm an accidental activist. I have no intention of like going out there and saying to people, this is what we must do. I just very much had this strong core of this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing. And I don't understand why people are not understanding what the right thing is. Why are we doing this? And so I accidentally became an activist, accidentally talking about these things. And what's happened is I just got tired of it. And I've got tired of saying, look at this, surely this is happening. And I feel like no one's listening. So the best thing for me to do is grow the vegetables in my own garden and share them with my own friends and make dal and make roti and say, come and sit at my table. Let's talk about things that are fun and happy and, grow it that way.
Yeah, because it doesn't have to look like what you think it looks like, does it?
No, we've destroyed community, haven't we? And I'm trying to rebuild that. So I have people come to my house and say, we're just going to eat some food together and talk about some interesting stuff. And here's a cup of tea. Or what do you need? You need me to do this, or do you need someone to help with your laundry, or this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't think we figure things out by talking about them, actually. I noticed with literature, when I used to run a reading group, that we used to have all these different kinds of people come together, and if you were to kind of let them talk about their ordinary things, the things that they believe that they're identified through, politics and nationality and so on, they wouldn't get on. But because we talked about a different story and a different poem every week, they kind of fell in love with each other.
Yeah.
So if you have something above that, when you don't talk about your usual shit, then we can actually be humans together, can't we?
Yeah. Also,
and those things kind of disappear then, don't they?
Yes. Also, one of the reasons I do music therapy, which is for free, which is through this charity called Naught of Robins, is because I was sick of words, and because words are my business, and talking about things just felt so empty. And I needed to go somewhere that was ancient and tribal, and that really set me free, actually, weirdly. And it's not something I particularly believed in before. I didn't understand it. I just sort of was pulled towards this thing. And I go there once a week and I sit there and hit things and rhythm, just the idea of, whether it's the djembe or the tabla or these ancient cultures that were so... they knew about these things. These things are important for our daily living, more than words for me at the minute.
So are we going to see a very different author after the Khan trilogy then? Or are you going to allow her? Or, because I see sometimes with authors that we find our vein, I write this, and then that's what you do. You have to perform being that author. And I won't mention any names, but I've had, because I teach meditation as well, as you know, I've had many an author have quiet conversations with me going, I don't think I can do this anymore. Having to run this through my veins. I'm cracking up. What shall I do?
Yeah.
And then, meditation teacher John has to kind of step in. I've had that conversation more times than the people telling me would like to admit. Are you going to allow a different Saima to come through?
Well, you said the word perform, and that's like an allergic word. It's
Isn't
a word
it?
I'm allergic to, perform. And very much that. I can't perform anything. I've never been able to. And I think that's why I've ended up in difficult situations sometimes, because if I could perform, if I could mask just enough to behave like a normal person, maybe some of the things that had happened to me wouldn't have happened if I could just shut up and, have less of my portfolio of opinions. So no, I'm not going to perform. There are some thrillers that I'd like to write because I like those stories, and they're stories that haven't been told. But there is a book that I really, really want to write that I know the title of, and I kind of know what it's about, and it's not in any way a crime novel. So my wish is, and I'm going to say it out loud for the universe to bring it to me, is that I get the time and space and financial backing to write a book a bit like I said about Arundhati Roy and her God of Small Things, because that's always been my dream since I was a child.
Awesome. Can't wait to read that one.
Well, let's
That's
make
amazing.
it happen.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so let's put that out there. Let's have that as an actual thing. When you're in the writing zone, because we have in writing times and out of writing times. Not that there's anything wrong with not writing. It's absolutely essential to not write for an author. This idea of continuous creativity is insanity.
Yes.
There's feeding.
It is, yeah.
There's feeding, and then there's creation. And without the feeding, there's no creation. You're just an empty thing. And I see that a lot as well, unfortunately. But when you are writing, what does that look like? What's a writing day look like for you?
Do you know, I end up in a fugue state when I am writing, which is why it's dangerous for me, which is why I can't do it constantly either.
Yeah.
So I drop my children at school at 8:30, or my husband drops them. And then I sit down at my desk by about 9:30. And I know what's going to come because I've planned it the day before, especially if I'm editing or writing. And I write through till about 12, 12:30, and then I have something to eat. And then I write through till about 2:30, and then it's school pickup, and then that's done. Which is also why I end up in a fugue state and a bit burnt out, because picking up children and looking after them is still work. So I can't do it for very long, so I only usually do it for about 3 weeks at a time.
So you have 3-week blocks.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
That's about the thing of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I just burn out. And they say, do what you love and you don't work a day in your life, which is rubbish, because for me it's do what you love and all you ever do is work. And I can't stop. And I literally am just like buzzing, and I'm just like, I need someone to stop me.
Nobody won't go away, will it? That's the thing. You describe writing
away.
as being, what is it, a thing that's tumbling inside your head all of the time.
Yeah, especially with a book. It is like, and towards the end of it, which is where I'm at now, it's like carrying a 3D shape above my head, and I'm walking around with it, and I can't, until I've handed it over to the editor, it's there all the time. It's all those characters.
And how long does it take for a book to go away for you? Because I found that when I write a prose book, it's a couple of years before there's a new idea, a proper new idea.
Yeah.
If I did something else, it would be almost a continuation of what came before. I
have ideas, lots of ideas. That's part of my problem. The going away bit for me is those characters, because I love them and they live with me. And I'm a bit like the character from Practical Magic, where I've called someone into existence, where I very much know that one of the characters in the Khan, I wrote in Practical Magic, she writes this man who she doesn't ever want to meet, but the man that is the love of her life. And, that's very much who I kind of was writing, I think, in that kind of thing. So you write these people that you love, and then it's letting go of them. It's hard.
So you've been in Khan world a long time, because originally you started working on the Khan and you entered the SI Leeds Prize. Was that 2012, 2013?
So I've been in Khan, yeah.
How long have you been in Khan world?
Yeah, 2012.
2012.
Long time.
So 13 years.
Yeah, and it kind of goes out in and out because once one book is done and gone, then I don't really think about it again. But then I've had to re-enter it when I wrote Vengeance, and I've re-entered it again. And so, I do want to kill her off.
Yeah.
I just want to kill her off.
Give the ending away.
I just want to, I know, will I and will I not? I don't know.
Well,
but there is a bit of me that just wants to burn it all to the ground.
And then bang your drums.
Yeah, well, pretty much what you've said about performative thing, I just, if I burn it to the ground, then no one can make me perform anymore. I'm not a monkey.
No. I've seen a lot of people kind of burn their thing to the ground, then go running back to it.
That's it. Someone said to me, Dorothy Cooperson said to me, you need to put them in a coma.
Yeah.
But it depends about money, doesn't it? I suppose if you put them in a coma, then they can always reawaken it.
No, but the thing is, with having Asian characters, there's always the cousins, uncles, brothers, mothers, pet cat.
Yeah.
Could kind of surface as a criminal mastermind years later, couldn't they?
I could totally do that. Offshoots of it all everywhere. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Let's close out with a kind of more standard authorly interview question.
Okay. Hit me.
Hit you. I'll leave that to Gia Khan and her hench ladies.
Henchwomen.
Henchwomen, yeah. Fantastic. If you were on a desert island, let's steal from Radio 4. If you were on a desert island and you could have any 3 books or pop culture artifacts with you to pass your time, what would they be and why?
Well, I would definitely take a collected speeches of Malcolm X, because how can you not read those and reread those? Oh my goodness, pop culture artifacts. Can I take music with me?
Of course you can.
Can I take a playlist of music?
Yeah. As long as it's not, people who invest in military drones, it's okay.
I would have a really eclectic mix of ghazals and qawwalis and also pop music from the 80s that I grew up with. And I've got my book. And what else am I going to have?
So you got book and music.
And a notebook and paper. That's all I need.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Yeah. And joy.
And joy. Joy, may the universe bring it to us.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah.
I
we
think
deserve
you make it
right?
for yourself.
I'm sick of making it for myself.
Not
now,
make
John.
it for yourself, but it's
joy.
It's to be uncovered within.
It's the uncovering.
It's the uncovering
yeah.
of it.
Wouldn't it be great to just be washed over by joy?
Yeah.
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 Well, my husband said to me, he said, really good date for you is just someone who takes you to dinner and reads you poetry. And I said, what's wrong with that? That's exactly what I want. Sounds perfect. So
okay,
there's joy.
So you get back to London tonight.
Yes.
And your husband's going to take you for dinner and he's going to read your poetry, is that right?
Well, no, there's probably going to be 3 kids there who are
Well, they can all read your poetry too, can't they?
They can, yeah.
Okay, so that's what's serving up this evening.
It is.
Saima, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
Bless you.
John Siddique was in conversation with Saima Mir. To hear more writers, go to writersmosaic.org.uk.